Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to teach you how to activate random cables no overlap toggle. So these are the models that I made just for the thumbnail, but we will use it later to demonstrate the effect of the no overlap toggle for the random cables. So we have two operators in random flow which activates certain features using object selection. We have panel cloth and random cables. So with panel cloth, you actually need to uh, select the objects that you will need for the object collection feature. So for example, if I select this object here as well, selecting this too, and then the last one will be the active object and will be the source mesh that will be uh, creating the cloth simulation. So selecting a face from the source mesh. The rest of the selection will be used for object collection. So panel cloth, and we're going to use puff, the puppy preset, and then activate object collision. So there you go. You can see the bumps where the object that is assigned for the collisions affect the cloth. So that is the way to activate it with panel cloth. Selecting objects and then the active object will be the one used for generating the cloth simulation, and the rest of the selection or earlier selection will be the one used for object collision. Okay, so but that is different for random cables. It doesn't necessarily need object selection, but more on how more on the visibility of the objects. Selection to cursor. Just bring it down. Okay. So how random cables operate using its no overlap feature or toggle is that it will consider everything or every mesh in the scene for collision. So if you have a heavy scene, then you will need to actually hide the objects that you don't need for the collision and only keep the objects that are required for the um, uh, no overlap detection in this case visible. So since these objects are somewhat on a high range in terms of resolution, we're going to hide them and just keep these objects that we need for the collision. So for example, if I have something like this visible, I only need to pick these two and select the faces that will generate the cables. And then random cables, we're going to use high slack, no overlap. So let's not use this by default, but we're going to probably offset curve. Oh no, not, there we go, just the basic one. So 50, adjust the catenary effect. Now we can toggle on overlap, and you can see so check this to get rid of the cables that have their start and ends on the same island. There we go. So what this does, what the no overlap toggle or feature does is gets rid of the cable that are overlapping something or a mesh object in the scene. So for example, cable 1 is overlapping this cube here. It will be removed. And as you can see, we have 100 cables amount that is supposed to be generated. But when we toggle this on, then most of the cable has been removed. That is because the overlap detection happens after the cable generation. So it doesn't activate the no overlap detection while the curve is being generated. That is because of the speed issue. If it is done like that, then the operator would be too slow, or the feature would be too slow to actually be used. So the um, the method used here is that once the total amount of cable is generated, then the overlap detection will be activated. So, for example, it will go through every single strand of the cable and then detect if it overlaps something. If it overlaps something, then it gets rid of it, and you can see the effect here. And the only ones that remained are these ones here. So we just need to uh, edit the slack to get the effect. If you want more cable, you need to increase this, and this is without overlap. And this is oh yeah, without overlap, and this is with no, this is with overlap, and this is without overlap. Okay, so and if I hide this and use the same objects again, there we go. So you can see the avoidance. Just be careful with the cable amount, because using too much will of course slow down the operator. You need to find the balance between the properties, so you can play around with the cable amount and the slack. Eventually the curve will find a way, depending on the randomization, will find a way to connect to the oops. There we go. So there's still no overlap. And you can play around with the origin seed to randomize the position of the cables. And you can also make it avoid overlapping itself by toggling this off. So with this on, the cables can overlap each other, but with this off, then um, they can't do that. But this has additional processing overhead, so it can add to the slowing down of the operation. So once it begins to slow down, you can't really slide this. You can see the slide action with no with a fewer cable. You can see me drag the cable amount property left to right, and it's really fast. But once it gets higher, for example 200, when you drag, it gets a bit laggy. So with something like 400, do not use the drag function for the properties anymore. Instead, just manually enter the value. And here is also the same case. So if you want to play around with the slack, because playing around with this using manual inputs, well, of course, it's not really that intuitive. So what you can do is Since you're just playing around with the slack, modifying the slack, I mean, then you can use fewer number, then play around with the or modify the stacks, the slack. So after you find the right amount that you're looking for, then you can increase the number. Okay. So again, the random cables overlap feature works on all visible mesh objects in the scene. So to keep the operation light, make sure that only the objects that are needed for the operation are visible in the viewport. So hiding things in Blender is using the H hotkey. So for example, if I want to hide that object, I press H. And if I want to make them visible, I press Alt H. And you can see that the hidden objects are selected. You can press F9, then toggle this off to unselect them. So for example, if I have this selected, and then I press Alt H, and using the default. So this is the default behavior is with the select toggle on. You can see that I have this one selected, but if I toggle this off, so the hidden objects that are now visible are deselected, and my old selection is still selected. Okay, so that's how you can hide objects in Blender, and also you can use outliner for this. So the objects that you have selected are marked or highlighted, and then the rest you can just click and drag and hide them all. And we have parented objects here, so it might be easier to just use active selection using the viewport, but yeah, using the outliner can also work. Okay, so let's do it with our more complicated subjects, the tubes. Okay, so for something like this, if you modeled, if you randomize something like this and want to create proxies, so I can't really select this space because of the direction. Because if we want to use catenary, then we have to select faces that are below the model. And since this has a mirror modifier, we can only select this. So it's not gonna work. This is on top unless of course you want to use auto mirror. This is also available in random flow. Use auto mirror to oops. Oh yeah, auto mirror to. So you basically just click here and you can press confirm, and then you have switched the real geometry to this side. But then we also want this here. You want faces selected here, but in order to do that, we need to apply the mirror. So if you want to keep the mirror, then you can use the in utility, you can use random flow. Not utility, in mesh and extract faces. So I'm going to extract that. Yeah. So the difference between this random flows extract faces versus creative flows extract faces is that uh, random flow is really basic. I think it doesn't have auto mirroring function, and also it doesn't use the solidify modifier. So this is just a means to create proxy meshes from um, the source mesh to actually be used for randomization. If you're done with it, then you can just delete it. We're also gonna need some faces here. Again, the real geometry is on that side, but we need to choose select faces on the underside of the model. So we extract. I'm pressing Shift, then click to use the select plus functionality, and the expansion of the selection can be um, is stopped by sharp edges. I think using 30-degree angle threshold. So press confirm. Then we have that. Selecting our extract. So exact proxy and extract proxy. Okay. When selecting the faces, and we don't need the other randomized objects for the collision. So let's select the ones that we need only for the collection and shift H. So H hides the selected object. Shift H inverts the functionality and hides the unselected objects instead. Okay. Then I press Alt. I press Alt. Oh, you can easily select it now. Okay, now we um, will activate the no overlap. We're using 400. Okay, maybe not 400. Let's try 100 at first. Or 50. Then play around with the or modify the slack. So this is with oh, star overlapping. There we go. So this is with um no overlap. So the because of the because of the resolution of the objects involved, it can be slow using this feature. So when I need to, we can just manually input the values and don't use the sliding action to change the value of the properties. Okay, so now I can play around with the origin seed to randomize the position, the start and end of the cables, depending on the islands that you are using. We also have the slack seed. This randomizes the slack based on the values that you have signed in the min and max properties. Okay, so for example, we have something like that. Okay, now we get rid of this. Uh, Maybe not yet. So Alt H, and we're going to create a simple material for this. Just a black material or a dark material. There you go. And so I modeled this bit to be like a conduit. So you can array this to create the overhanging pipes in your scene. So this is since this is at this resolution, um, so this you can use limited dissolve to bring down the resolution. Maybe use something like 2 degrees or 1 degree. So we have a lot of shading error. Or just manually delete edges to bring down the resolution. Okay, so we I'm going to create another variation of this. So I'm going to hide this and shift select a mesh, Shift G, and select all type. Then bring it here. Then select the objects that I need for the collision. Drag proxy. So I'm pressing Alt and then right clicking. So the Blender shows me all the objects underneath the mouse cursor. So I'm choosing the extract proxy. These are the meshes that are created using the extract functionality in both the random flow and creative flow add-ons. The extract extrusion, this means the random loop extrusion. This is also random loop extrusion. So these are the suffixes I've assigned to let you know what kind of mesh it is based on the random operators that you have used. So click on this, and then to expand the selection, press Shift and Alt right here. Then I select while still press yeah, just click on it. You can release the shift and then select these objects here and hide everything else so they won't be used when computing the no overlap functional when the no overlap functionality is computing for the scene. Actually, let's limit dissolve this using 5 degrees. Okay, and then random tubes. You can just toggle this on with, or oops, not random tubes, random cables. Just click the catenary option. We have that. So this is our second iteration. You can of course play around with it some more using the origin seed, as well as the slack seed. Bring it down to 5 and just play with this. And 150. There we go. And Alt H. Okay. Material is this. Let's just drag this icon here and drop it to the surface of the mesh. So we have our two variation of the conduit with different pipe not pipe the cable arrangement. So with each so for example, these two has cables and the some of the other connections doesn't have those, don't have those. So if this is something like that and this is hanging on the top of your scene, make empty and focus. Okay, so something like that. So for example, this is like a marketplace. And this is, so we need to make the yeah. So for example, if this is longer, so this is like a marketplace, and this is your tubes here or conduits hanging, and we have cables. So yeah, you can use it for something like that. And of course, you have no overlap, so the viewer cannot see any overlap, so there's no problem with the scene. Let's try and make the light another angle. There we go. And that's it. That's how you can use the no overlap feature or activate the no overlap feature in random cables. Now, after you finished with the design, all you need to do is clean up and make this lighter. Lighter, by which means that you delete all the edges that that are not really being used to make the scene lighter. So, for example, here, you can delete this. It's not being used, and this. So this is one is being used to for the structure here, and this one is for the connection. And this one is not being used, so that's deleted. That's also deleted. These edge loops are being used to maintain the structure of the cylinder, so we can't really delete that. And for something like this, you can of course use the diamond technique. There you go, to save up on resolution. And yeah, you can do that for the rest of the objects. Oh, there we go. So for this one, since this is quad, let me use subdivide. Now it doesn't work. It's too degraded. Limit dissolve with 5 degrees of boundaries. Then this is actually much faster. You think this is a mess, but this actually can be fixed quite easily. Control by using the knife or using triangulation. If you're just using this works, if you are just using this for concept art renders. But if you going to use the geometry for something like production, then you have to clean this up manually, which is quite easy. You can just select this and do that. Shift, Alt Shift, click, or select all this. Select it like this, click, and then click here, and that tells Blender how to use the Control Shift Plus on the numpad. And with that selected, go to select loops, edge loops, Control X. See, it's really easy. For the shading, you can fix it by doing that, creating supporting edges on the sharp edges. But for deleting it, you can just click, Control Shift Plus, and then F3. What command is that? Select edge loops, or yeah, edge loops. You can just use the search function, edge loops. Okay, select edge loops, Control X. So using the select function is much faster. The search function is much faster than once you've searched it, it shows up at the top of the search history. So you can do this, then F3, and do that. So it's not that hard to print this kind of topology, because you can see that it's really just mostly relaxed areas. And when you're done with making the geometry slide or lighter for the blend file, then you can assign this as asset that you can use the asset browser to drag and drop it to your scene. So if you create this kind of module or unit, like 10 times, 10 variation of this, then you'd have a more dynamic scene or more believable scene because the viewer cannot detect any repeating patterns. Okay, so and the proxy meshes, you can delete that after you've used it. So I've named it like that so you can easily uh, find out what kind of object it is. So for example, random panels, this is named as cylinder point zero ten, that's the source mesh, and cylinder point zero one zero underscore R panel is the resulting randomized mesh, which has been created using the random panels operator. For example, random slice. There we go. So you can easily use the alt, then right mouse click to search for the objects. So cylinder 10, that's like a source mesh. And with something like this one, which has RLXTR, that means random loop extrude, which is created using the random loop extrude operator in random file. Okay, so yeah, again, that's it. If you have any questions, use the comment section below or the links in the description. I hope you learned something new today or in this video. Um, hit subscribe and notify if you want to learn more about the add-ons, and also please like this video so it can be shown to other people. Okay, so thank you for watching and you have a nice day.